And that concludes our overview of Class 3 predatory species. Professor Zixtal chittered, their crystalline appendages gleaming under the lecture hall's ambient lighting. Now, does anyone have questions about, yes, the human in the back? Sarah Martinez fought the urge to roll her eyes as every head in the Xenozoology 101 lecture swiveled to stare at her. Being the only human at the Galactic Federation University's prestigious biology program had its downsides, like being constantly reminded that she came from what most species considered a cute little garden world. Professor, I couldn't help but notice that Earth's oceanic predators weren't mentioned in the classification system. Where exactly would something like a great white shark fit in? The professor's crystalline structure flickered in what Sarah had learned was their species' equivalent of a condescending smile. Ah, Ms. Martinez, while your enthusiasm is appreciated, Earth's aquatic life forms are generally considered Class 2 at most. Perhaps you're overstating the capabilities of these sharks due to your species' naturally timid nature? A ripple of chittering laughter spread through the lecture hall. Sarah felt her face flush, but not from embarrassment. No, this was the kind of righteous indignation that only came from watching someone be criminally wrong about something you knew intimately. Professor, with all due respect, I think there's been a misunderstanding about Earth's marine ecosystem. Sarah stood up, tablet in hand. Would you mind if I shared some data about great white sharks with the class? By all means. Professor Zixtal gestured magnanimously with their upper appendages. It's important for students to learn why we classify species as we do. Sarah connected her tablet to the holographic display system. The image of a great white shark, shown to scale, materialized above the lecture hall. Several students from naturally aquatic species visibly recoiled. The great white shark, Carcharodon carcharias, Sarah began, letting her inner biology nerd take over, is what we humans call an apex predator. They can grow up to 6 meters in length, weigh up to 2,268 kilograms, and have been evolving their hunting techniques for approximately 400 million years. Yes, the professor interrupted. But size alone doesn't determine classification. Their hunting methods must meet certain criteria. They can smell a single drop of blood in 100 liters of water, Sarah continued, pulling up more data. Their teeth are serrated and continuously replace themselves throughout their lifetime. A single bite can exert a force of up to 18,000 newtons, and their skin is covered in microscopic teeth called dermal denticles that allow them to swim silently through water at speeds up to 56 kilometers per hour. The lecture hall had grown very quiet. Someone in the front row made a small whimpering sound. But perhaps most importantly, Sarah added, now thoroughly warming to her subject, great whites have something called electroreception. They can literally sense the electromagnetic fields produced by other animals' heartbeats, and they've been known to breach the surface of the water. That means jump completely out of it while hunting seals. Imagine a 3-ton predator launching itself into the air just to catch its prey. Professor Zixtal's crystalline structure had taken on a distinctly pale hue. That's quite impressive, Ms. Martinez. But surely these creatures must have significant weaknesses. Oh, absolutely. Sarah nodded, bringing up a new hologram. They're not even our most dangerous marine predator. Would you like to hear about the orca? We call them killer whales, but they're actually the largest member of the dolphin family. They hunt great white sharks for sport, specifically targeting their livers, which they can remove with surgical precision. They've been known to create waves to wash seals off ice floes, and they teach these hunting techniques to their young. They're one of the few species besides humans that actively passes down cultural knowledge. Cultural knowledge? A student in the front row squeaked. They've even been known to work with human whalers historically, herding larger whales into bays in exchange for a share of the catch. Oh, and speaking of whales, the sperm whale is the largest predator to ever exist on Earth. They hunt giant squid in the midnight zone of our oceans, using echolocation so powerful it can stun their prey. The pressure at those depths would crush most spacecraft, by the way. The professor had begun to sway slightly. Ms. Martinez, I believe we may need to reassess our classification system. Perhaps we should take a short break while I consult with some colleagues. Of course, Professor, Sarah said sweetly. Should I prepare some information about our terrestrial predators for after the break? I have some fascinating data about honey badgers. Did you know they regularly fight off lions and have been observed using tools? That won't be necessary. Professor Zixtal managed, their voice notably higher than usual. Class dismissed. And Ms. Martinez? Yes, Professor? I believe we'll be updating the xenozoology curriculum to include a separate section on Earth's biosphere. Would you be interested in serving as a consultant? Sarah smiled, thinking of all the other Earth species she couldn't wait to introduce to her classmates. The saltwater crocodile's bite force, the mantis shrimp's hypersonic punch, the pistol shrimp's underwater plasma blast, the box jellyfish's invisible death touch. I'd be honored, Professor. Should we start with the deep ocean species, or would you prefer to ease into it with something simpler, like pack-hunting wolves? The professor's crystalline structure briefly flickered into ultraviolet wavelengths, their species equivalent of a cold sweat. Perhaps we should start with something less aggressive. Surely your world must have some herbivores. Oh, absolutely. Sarah's grin widened. Let me tell you about hippos. They're herbivores, but they kill more humans annually than any other African mammal. You see, being an herbivore on Earth doesn't necessarily mean you're peaceful. As Sarah launched into her explanation of territorial hippopotamus behavior, she noticed several students frantically taking notes while others seemed to be researching Earth's wildlife on their personal devices. Their expressions ranged from horrified fascination to outright terror, particularly when someone pulled up footage of a cassowary attack. Professor Zixtal had finally regained some of their composure. Ms. Martinez, I feel I owe you and your species an apology. We had classified Earth as a Class II world based primarily on its atmospheric and gravitational conditions. We never considered that such conditions might produce such interesting evolutionary adaptations. No offense taken, Professor, Sarah replied. It's a common misconception. Even humans sometimes forget just how metal our planet's ecosystem is. Would you believe we have a small fish that can climb waterfalls? A fish that climbs? The waterfall climbing goby. They use suction cups to crawl up vertical surfaces. Oh, and while we're on the subject of fish, have you heard about electric eels? They can generate up to 860 volts of electricity. We actually studied them to develop better batteries. A student in the middle row raised a trembling appendage. Excuse me, but you're saying your species deliberately studied these creatures? For science? Of course. How else would we learn about them? Besides, most Earth scientists would tell you that field research is the best part of the job. Well, except maybe for the time that one researcher had to fight off a great white shark by booping it on the nose. But that's actually a funny story. As Sarah continued sharing her encyclopedic knowledge of Earth's wildlife, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Sure, humans might not have crystalline bodies or natural bioluminescence or telepathic abilities like some of her classmates. But any species that could not only survive but thrive on a planet that produced the bobbit worm deserved a little respect. By the end of the impromptu lecture, 3 students had declared their intention to transfer to different majors. One had fainted after seeing footage of a moray eel's pharyngeal jaws, and Professor Zixtal had officially reclassified Earth as a Class 5 death world, with unique evolutionary pressures requiring further study. Sarah considered this a good start. She hadn't even gotten to the part about how some of Earth's deadliest predators were insects, or the fact that platypuses were venomous, or that octopi could open jars and solve puzzles, or, well, there would be time for all that in the updated curriculum. After all, she had a whole planet's worth of nightmares to share with her newfound friends. And if that helped earn humanity a little more respect in the galactic community, all the better. Though she did feel a little bad about the student who fainted. Maybe she should have warned them about the second set of jaws thing first. Same time next week, Professor? Sarah asked as she packed up her tablet. Professor Zixtal's crystalline structure vibrated in what might have been a nervous laugh. Yes, though perhaps we should issue a warning about graphic content before the next session. And Ms. Martinez? That's not possible, one of the Silicon students protested. You're describing at least 4 different evolutionary paths simultaneously. Welcome to Australian wildlife, Sarah shrugged. Want to hear about the kangaroo? It's basically a 6-foot-tall jumping powerhouse with a built-in baby pocket and a tail it can use as a third leg. They box each other for dominance and can disembowel predators with their feet. The cafeteria had grown quiet as more students gathered around Sarah's table. She was beginning to realize that her impromptu lectures might be having some unintended consequences when a tall, graceful being composed entirely of interconnected light strands approached. Pardon the interruption, the light being said, their voice a melodious hum. I am Dean Luminax of the Xenobiology Department. Ms. Martinez, would you be interested in teaching a special seminar series? We believe our students could benefit from a more comprehensive understanding of Earth's biosphere. Sarah blinked in surprise. I'd be honored, Dean Luminax. Though we might want to start with something gentle. Maybe the symbiotic relationships in coral reefs? Ah, yes. The underwater colonies that build limestone structures and harbor diverse ecosystems. The Dean nodded approvingly. Right. And some species of cleaner shrimp have evolved to perform dental work on predatory fish, cleaning their teeth without getting eaten. The moray eels even recognize specific shrimp and wait their turn for cleaning. A student in the back raised an appendage. You mean your world's creatures have developed interspecies healthcare systems? Kind of. We also have birds that clean crocodiles' teeth, and mammals that warn each other about predators even across species. There's even a species of worm that lives inside crabs' bodies and mind controls them into taking care of the worm's eggs instead of their own. The Dean's light strands pulsed with interest. Perhaps we should schedule a faculty meeting to discuss this further. Though I must ask, these creatures you mentioned earlier, the sharks and orcas, they're confined to your oceans, correct? There's no chance of encountering them in space? Sarah thought about the various plans for deep-sea mining operations and potential space-based aquaculture projects that Earth scientists had been discussing. Well, currently they're Earthbound, though humans have been pretty creative about adapting our environment to suit our needs. Did you know we've already sent tardigrades to space? And there's been some interesting research into using shark skin patterns to improve spacecraft aerodynamics. The Dean's light strands flickered briefly. I see. In that case, I believe we should also schedule a meeting with the Galactic Transportation Safety Board. Perhaps some updated protocols regarding Earth-based vessels might be in order. As the Dean departed, and the crowd of students gradually dispersed, Sarah noticed that her synthetic protein lunch had gone cold. She didn't mind, though. Watching her classmates' reactions to Earth's wildlife was far more entertaining than any meal. Plus, she still hadn't told them about the parasitic wasps that laid their eggs inside living caterpillars, or the cordyceps fungi that turned ants into zombies, or the fact that some species of octopi carried coconut shells around as portable armor. Maybe she should save those for the advanced seminar. A soft chime indicated an incoming message on her tablet. It was from Professor Zixtal. Ms. Martinez, the faculty committee has approved your special seminar series. However, they've requested that you begin with, and I quote, the least nightmare-inducing Earth species possible. Perhaps those sleeping leaf-eaters you mentioned? Sarah smiled as she typed her response. Of course, Professor. Though I should mention that sloths are actually excellent swimmers, and their fur hosts entire ecosystems of algae, fungi, and arthropods. Also, they only come down from their trees once a week to defecate, which has led to some fascinating evolutionary adaptations. The professor's reply came several minutes later. Perhaps we should start with earth plants instead. Great idea, Sarah wrote back enthusiastically. Wait until you hear about the Venus flytrap, and the strangling figs, and the tree that can walk. This time, there was no response. Sarah made a mental note to bring some nice, calming footage of sea cucumbers to the next class. Though maybe she should wait until later to mention that they could shoot their internal organs at predators as a defense mechanism. After all, good teachers knew the importance of pacing their material. The day of Sarah's first special seminar arrived with more fanfare than she'd expected. The lecture hall was packed with students from every department, and she noticed several prominent crystalline recording devices hovering near the ceiling. Apparently, her class was being broadcast to other Federation universities. Welcome to Introduction to Terran Biology, Beyond the Classification System. Sarah began, trying to ignore the fact that even the maintenance droids had paused their duties to watch. As requested by the faculty committee, we'll begin with some of Earth's plant life. A collective sigh of relief rippled through the audience. Plants were safe. Plants were harmless. Plants just sat there photosynthesizing, right? Sarah pulled up her first hologram. This is Dionea muscipula, commonly known as the Venus flytrap. It's a carnivorous plant that uses modified leaves to trap and digest insects. The hologram demonstrated the plant's rapid snap mechanism in slow motion. Several students flinched. The leaves are lined with trigger hairs, Sarah continued, warming to her subject. When an insect touches them, the trap snaps shut in about 1/10 of a second. The plant then secretes digestive enzymes and absorbs the nutrients from its prey. A faculty member raised an appendage. Ms. Martinez, are you suggesting that your world's autotrophs have evolved to become predatory? Oh, absolutely. We have several genera of carnivorous plants. The pitcher plants drown their prey in digestive fluid. Sundews use sticky tentacles to trap insects, and the bladderwort has the fastest known movement in the plant kingdom. It can suck in prey in less than a millisecond. But They're still rooted in place, correct? Someone asked hopefully. Well, most of them. Though we do have the walking palm tree, which can essentially walk by growing new roots in the direction it wants to move, while letting its old roots die off. And then there's the strangling fig, which starts life as an epiphyte in the canopy and sends roots down to slowly envelop and crush its host tree. A student near the front began rapidly taking notes. This is fascinating. The aggressive nature of Earth's fauna appears to have influenced even its flora's evolution. Exactly, Sarah beamed. Even our grass has evolved to contain silica particles that wear down herbivore teeth over time. And some plants release chemical signals to warn others of danger or to call in predatory insects to defend them. They communicate? Dean Luminax's light strands flickered with interest. Through chemical signals, yes. Some trees even share resources through underground fungal networks. We call it the Wood Wide Web. Sarah paused as her translator struggled to convey the pun. Sorry, that's a human joke. The point is, Earth's plants have evolved some pretty incredible survival strategies. She brought up another hologram. This is the Jimpy Jimpy plant from Australia. Its sting is so painful that it can drive animals mad and has been known to kill horses. The pain can last for months, and there are reports of human soldiers shooting themselves to end the agony. The dean's light strands dimmed noticeably. Ms. Martinez, I believe we may need to revise our classification of Earth's plant life as well. These trees and plants of yours seem to be as formidable as your fauna. Oh, wait until you hear about the manchineel tree. Its sap can burn through metal, and standing under it during rain can cause chemical burns. Indigenous peoples used to use its sap to poison their arrows. A crystalline student in the front row raised their appendage. Excuse me, but are you saying your species identified these dangerous plants and then deliberately weaponized them? Sarah considered this. Well, yes. Though to be fair, we also learned to use plants for medicine, food, building materials, and countless other beneficial purposes. Humans have a long history of studying our environment and finding creative ways to use what we learn. Like those water bears you sent to space? Someone called from the back. Exactly. Though speaking of space, Sarah pulled up a new hologram. Let me tell you about some of the extremophile plants we've discovered. There are species that can survive in volcanic hot springs, in Arctic ice, in near total darkness, and even in highly radioactive environments. We're actually studying them to help design better space colonies. The maintenance droids had completely abandoned their tasks now, their optical sensors fixed on Sarah's presentation. One of them was making what sounded suspiciously like notes in its internal memory. For next week's session, Sarah concluded, we'll be discussing Earth's fungal kingdom. Did you know we have a mushroom network in Oregon that's technically the largest living organism on Earth? It's about 2,085 acres in size and potentially over 8,650 years old. A single organism that large? Dean Luminax's light strands pulsed with excitement. Remarkable. Though, these fungi are peaceful decomposers, yes? Sarah thought about cordyceps, the zombie ant fungus, and the various other parasitic fungi that had evolved on Earth. Well, mostly. Though there are some interesting examples of parasitic relationships that you might find fascinating. For instance, there's this one species that infects ants and controls their behavior. As the lecture hall erupted into a new round of questions, Sarah noticed Professor Zixtal making notes for yet another curriculum revision. The professor's crystalline structure had taken on a peculiar orange hue that Sarah hadn't seen before, possibly their species' equivalent of existential dread. She decided to wait until next semester to introduce the concept of prehistoric Earth's carnivorous fungi, which had grown to truly massive sizes during the planet's higher oxygen periods. After all, there was only so much paradigm-shifting information her audience could handle in one day, though she did make a mental note to start preparing them for the eventual discussion of Earth's bacteria and viruses. That lecture might need its own special warning system. News of Sarah's seminars had spread far beyond the university. The Galactic Federation Science Council had taken a particular interest in her presentations, especially after her lecture on fungi sent 3 crystalline students into temporary hibernation states upon learning about cordyceps. Ms. Martinez, Dean Luminax approached her after the fungal lecture, light strands shimmering with what might have been concern. While your seminars have been enlightening, the Science Council has requested a more comprehensive understanding of Earth's defensive capabilities. Sarah looked up from her tablet where she'd been preparing notes on tardigrades. Defensive capabilities? But I've just been teaching basic biology. Precisely. The Dean's light strands pulsed rapidly. Your world has evolved organisms that can survive in space, regenerate themselves, control other species' minds, and communicate through underground networks. The Council is concerned about potential military applications. Oh, Sarah laughed. You're worried about bioweapons? Trust me, Earth's natural biology is way more terrifying than anything we could engineer. Did you know we have a snail that shoots venomous harpoons? And a sea cucumber that launches its own internal organs as a defense mechanism and then regrows them? The dean's light strands dimmed noticeably. Perhaps we should discuss this in my office. The Council has some specific questions about something called extremophiles. In the dean's office, Sarah found herself facing a holographic panel of various alien scientists. Their species ranged from gaseous to crystalline to something that appeared to be made entirely of magnetic fields. Ms. Martinez began a being composed of interlocking geometric shapes. Your lectures have raised some concerns about Earth's classification as a garden world. We understand you have organisms that can survive in virtually any environment. Well, yes, Sarah nodded. Tardigrades can survive the vacuum of space, radiation, extreme pressure, temperature ranges from near absolute zero to well above boiling, and complete dehydration. Then there's the Pompeii worm that lives in deep-sea hydrothermal vents at temperatures that would cook most other creatures. And Deinococcus radiodurans can survive radiation levels thousands of times what would kill a human. And these organisms, your species studies them? Deliberately? Of course. They're fascinating. We've learned so much about biology, evolution, and survival mechanisms from them. The applications for space travel alone are incredible. Plus, studying extremophiles has helped us understand how life might exist on other planets. A gaseous entity swirled anxiously. You're saying your species actively seeks out the most resilient and dangerous organisms on your planet, for research purposes? Well, how else would we learn about them? Sarah shrugged. Though if you think that's interesting, wait until you hear about our microorganisms. We have bacteria that can eat nuclear waste, viruses that can survive in boiling acid, and prions that can fold proteins into new shapes. The geometric being's shapes began rotating rapidly. Dean Luminax, we believe Earth requires a new classification entirely. Any species that evolved alongside such organisms and then chose to study them rather than flee to another planet clearly requires special consideration. Hey, humans aren't that tough, Sarah protested. We're actually pretty fragile compared to a lot of Earth life. We just learn to adapt and use our intelligence to survive. Though we did evolve to be persistence predators who can sweat, which lets us basically chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion. And we can survive some pretty extreme conditions with the right training. Like those monks who can raise their body temperature through meditation, or the free divers who can hold their breath for over 10 minutes. The council members exchanged what appeared to be alarmed glances. Ms. Martinez, the dean interjected gently. Perhaps we should focus on your next seminar topic. The faculty committee was hoping for something less concerning. Perhaps Earth's insects? Sarah brightened. Oh, great idea. Would you like to hear about the Japanese giant hornet? They can spray flesh-melting venom that also acts as a pheromone marker to summon their entire colony. Or maybe the bullet ant? Their sting is so painful that some indigenous tribes use it in warrior initiation rituals. Or there's the Darwin's bark spider that makes webs 10 times stronger than Kevlar. The council members' various forms of electromagnetic emissions had taken on distinctly distressed patterns. Actually, the geometric being interrupted. We have a more pressing question. Given Earth's apparently hostile biosphere, how has your species managed to achieve spaceflight without carrying these organisms beyond your planet? Sarah thought about the various quarantine protocols, sterilization procedures, and containment systems Earth had developed. Oh, we're very careful about that. We have strict protocols to prevent biological contamination. Though it's interesting you mention it, we've actually been studying how certain organisms might be beneficial for space colonization. Like using radiation-resistant bacteria to help shield spacecraft, or growing certain fungi to create self-repairing structures. The council erupted into a flurry of alarmed communications in various electromagnetic spectrums. Perhaps, Dean Luminax suggested diplomatically, we should schedule a separate session to discuss Earth's space exploration protocols. In detail. Very specific detail. Sarah nodded enthusiastically. Great idea. I can prepare a presentation on how we've adapted Earth's extremophiles for space research. Did you know we're working on using tardigrade proteins to protect human cells from radiation damage? And there's this fascinating study about using certain bacterial strains to recycle waste in closed systems. As the council members' various energy signatures began displaying signs of what the dean would later describe as collective existential recalibration, Sarah made a mental note to maybe tone down her enthusiasm in the next seminar, though she couldn't help but feel a bit proud. After all, it wasn't every day that a first-year student's biology lectures led to the creation of an entirely new planetary classification system. The new classification system, as it turned out, was just the beginning. Sarah's next seminar on Earth's insects drew attention from military strategists across the galaxy, particularly after she explained how ants had mastered agriculture, animal husbandry, and chemical warfare millions of years before humans evolved. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. General Vexthor of the Galactic Defense Force rumbled from the back of the lecture hall. His metallic exoskeleton gleamed as he consulted his notes. These leaf-cutter ants maintain fungal gardens, protect them with antibiotic-producing bacteria, and wage war against rival colonies using chemical weapons? That's right, Sarah confirmed, pulling up a hologram of a leafcutter ant colony's internal structure. They've been practicing sustainable agriculture for over 50 million years. They even have waste management systems and designated burial grounds for their dead. Fascinating, the general muttered. And these army ants you mentioned? Form living bridges and structures with their bodies, create complex raid formations, and can take down prey thousands of times their size through coordinated attacks, Sarah finished enthusiastically. Though personally, I find the Australian jumping jacks more interesting. They're ants that can jump up to 4 times their body length and are so aggressive that they're used to test military hardware's resistance to insect infestation. A strategic analyst in the front row raised a trembling appendage. Ms. Martinez, you mentioned earlier that these insects are among the smallest of Earth's macrofauna? Oh yes, most insects are quite small. Though we do have the giant weta, which is a cricket that can weigh as much as 3 mice. And the atlas moth has a wingspan of about 30 centimeters. But most insects are tiny. And yet, the analyst continued, their crystalline form flickering anxiously. You claim they're collectively one of the most successful groups of organisms on your planet? Sarah nodded. By biomass, absolutely. For every human on Earth, there are about 200 million insects. Some estimates suggest the total weight of all Earth's ants alone is roughly equal to the total weight of all humans. The lecture hall grew very quiet. But don't worry, Sarah added cheerfully. Most insects are harmless to humans. Well, except for the ones that spread diseases, and the parasitic ones, and the ones with medically significant venom. Though we've actually learned a lot from studying their venom components. Some show promise as pharmaceuticals. General Vexthor's exoskeleton emitted a low hum. Ms. Martinez, the Defense Force would be very interested in learning more about these insects, particularly their strategic capabilities and potential applications in various scenarios. Oh, they're amazing! Did you know that honeybees can recognize human faces and do complex mathematics? And they have a democratic system for choosing new hive locations. Though if you're interested in military applications, you might want to hear about the bombardier beetle. It creates a boiling hot chemical spray by mixing reactants in its abdomen. The general's optical sensors widened. It produces chemical weapons. Internally? Technically, it's a defense mechanism, Sarah explained. Like how the assassin bug wears its victims' corpses as camouflage, or how the antlion larvae build pit traps in the sand, or how the glowworm creates sticky fishing lines to catch flying prey in complete darkness. A new voice spoke up from the doorway. I believe we've heard enough. A tall figure composed of pure energy stepped into the lecture hall. I am High Commissioner Radiant from the Galactic Security Council. Ms. Martinez, your planet's biological capabilities have attracted significant attention at the highest levels of government. Sarah blinked in surprise. But I haven't even gotten to the really interesting insects yet. Like the orchid mantis that evolved to look exactly like a flower, or the caterpillars that disguise themselves as snakes, or the wasps that turn cockroaches into living food sources for their larvae. The High Commissioner's energy field pulsed with what might have been concern. Yes, that's precisely why we're here. The Council has decided to fast-track Earth's application for full Federation membership, effective immediately. Really? Sarah beamed. That's wonderful. Earth's scientists will be so excited to collaborate with other worlds. We have so many research projects that could benefit from galactic expertise, like our studies on adapting extremophiles for terraforming, or our work on understanding collective intelligence through ant colony behavior, or... The Council believes, the Commissioner interrupted smoothly, that it would be in everyone's best interest to closely monitor Earth's scientific development.